Hey everyone, my name is Leanne and today I'm going to be talking to you about a little review of my reading in 2017. I'm going to be talking about statistics, I'm going to be talking about goals, and I'm going to be talking about how those goals are going to change going into 2018. 2017 was a really big year for me. I had my final semester at university and I graduated and I got my first proper job. It was a year that was filled with a lot of unexpected things and uncertainty. And at the moment 2018 feels like it's going to be pretty similar. But despite all of the busyness and all of the change, I did a lot of reading in 2017. I read 108 books and I read 28,806 pages. It's less than last year, but I'm still super happy with it. I beat my Goodreads goal of reading 100 books, and for 2018 I'm going to keep my Goodreads goal at 100. I know a lot of people are talking about leaving pressure off themselves with reading and setting their Goodreads goal at 1 book or 10 books, and I think that is great. If that is something that you want to do with your reading, that is awesome. But for the past 2 years that I've set my Goodreads goal at 100 books, I've not felt any pressure from it whatsoever. So yes, my Goodreads goal is sticking at 100 books. I do read a lot of short books sometimes. I've read quite a few picture books this year. I've read quite a bit of poetry. Yes, that definitely helps in reaching a large Goodreads goal, but those pieces of literature are just as valid as a 500+ page novel. And to look a bit closer at the page numbers that I read in 2017, I read 16 books that were under 100 pages. I read 15 books that were between 100 and 199 pages. I read 24 books which were between 200 and 299 pages. I read 37 books that were between 300 and 399 pages. 13 books between 400 and 499, and 3 books that were over 500 pages. I'm pretty happy with that. I don't think there's anything that I really need to alter about that going into 2018. I do have a slight reluctance to pick up books that are over 500 pages. I find them a little bit intimidating. I find them a much longer term commitment. So I guess I would like to raise that number a little bit in 2018, but overall I'm really happy with this. The format of books that I have been reading are 58 digital books and 50 physical books. I did do a slightly more detailed breakdown of this, so ebooks that I've bought and e-arcs that I've been sent from NetGalley. But to be honest with you, these format statistics are kind of inaccurate in a sense, because a habit that I've got into in the last couple months is books that I have as e-arcs or ebooks that I have bought, books that keep getting pushed to the back of my TBR. If I come across them in the library, I have been borrowing them, or I have borrowed them digitally from the library in audiobook format. So even if there's a book that I've marked off as having read digitally, because these lists are in reference to my TBR, when I say I've read this digital book, it's a digital book that I've ticked off my TBR. I may have actually read this book physically because I got it from the library, and this is something that really works for me. It really helps with reading those e-arcs that I have left for months and months. I origin statistics that I'm not going to talk about. I did have a borrowed category, and I was only putting books that I didn't own and I had borrowed into that category, despite having borrowed a lot of books this year. Anyway, that's just confusing. I'm gonna carry on. 87 of the books that I read this year were by female authors, and 21 of the books I read this year were by male authors. I'm pretty happy with that. I did think about recording sexuality of authors in terms of understanding how diversely I was reading. And while I did read a lot of books this year that were by LGBT authors, it's not something that I wanted to specifically record because a lot of authors might not talk about their sexuality publicly. So I scrapped recording that statistic. Now here comes the shame. 24 of the books that I read this year were by BAME authors, so Black and minority ethnic authors, and 83 of the books that I read this year were by white authors, and 1 book was a mixed collection. So that's not great. This is something I've been banging on about for years. It's about time that I really put my money where my mouth is, trying to think of some sort of explanation for this statistic, and I guess what it just is that I own more books by white authors, and I don't really want to acquire more books. That is really hypocritical of me to say when I'm constantly doing haul videos. More on haul videos later. But I'm probably going to be moving around June time, so I don't want to acquire that much more stuff. I acquired a lot of stuff over winter. I'm going to try and make a more conscious effort to borrow books by BAME authors from the library. And something that I'm considering doing is taking all of the books that I have by BAME authors off my regular shelves and having like a specific pile of them, so it's something physical that I can see, a physical reminder. Because when I look at these numbers, it wouldn't be a huge amount of effort to get 50% of my writing to be BAME authors. I think this is something that I definitely need to check in with myself throughout the year a lot more regularly, not halfway through and then at the end. So I did a bad job, guys, and I'm gonna try and do better. The book types that I read 64 novels, I read 15 books of non-fiction, I read 15 poetry books, I read 1 play, 6 short story collections, and 7 graphic novels or picture books. One of my goals in 2017 was to read at least 1 non-fiction book and 1 poetry book per month. There were a few months where I missed out on doing this goal, but I have read 15 of each, so I have like compensated in other months. I was considering carrying this goal over to 2018 because for most of the year it worked really well. I did kind of stop thinking about it towards the end of the year, but then I was thinking I really want to add a classic onto that, and I was like, well, I really want to add a play onto that. But I didn't want to create a really strict TBR for myself every single month. I do have a little reading challenge that I'm going to talk about in a minute, and I think adding that into the mix would just really restrict me. So instead of having like a non-fiction book and a poetry book and a classic and a play and a short story collection that I want to read every month, I'm gonna forget about non-fiction book and a poetry book. I feel like after having done that in 2017, I've made them a lot more of a regular and consistent part of my reading that I don't really need to have a particular focus on that. And instead, I am going to incorporate reading at least 1 classic per month into my reading. And I don't know whether I want to have a short story collection or a play. I think a play would be a lot easier because they are very short, but I don't own many plays at all, so it would rely on borrowing or purchasing more books. I don't really want to purchase them. And I'm already using my library for what I mentioned about reading e-arcs that I have kind of forgotten about, and also for reading more BAME authors. And I don't want to be acquiring more books that aren't books that I own, so I'm probably going to go with a short story collection just because I already own more of them. Looking at the dates that I read books, I read 8 books in January, 11 books in February, 5 books in March, 4 books in April, 8 books in May, 12 in June, 12 in July, 10 in August, 11 in September, 9 in October, 10 in November, and 7 in December. There's a book missing there. In one of those months, I read another book. I think it's probably one of the summer months. Also, can you tell that I met my boyfriend in March? So my 2 most successful reading months were June and July, where I read 12 books, although potentially 13 in one of those. I'm pretty happy with all of these. There's nothing much more to say about those, really. Looking at the publication dates of books that I read in 2017, 36 of the books that I read were books that were published in 2017. That is because of a lot of e-arcs from NetGalley. 20 of the books I read were published in 2016, 9 in 2015, 26 in 2000 to 2014, 9 between 1945 and 1999, 4 between 1900 and 1944. 4 of the books I read were published in the 19th century, and I didn't read anything that was published earlier than that. Here I'm talking about the actual texts when they were originally published, not when the specific edition I read was published. As I said, definitely want to read more classics in 2018. While I do read a lot of new releases because of NetGalley, I'm not someone that doesn't like reading books from a few years ago. And speaking of NetGalley, if you don't know, NetGalley is a website that publishers use in order to send early ebook copies of their upcoming releases to people that talk about books a lot. It's a way for publishers to create buzz around their new releases. So in 2017, I acquired 75 e-arcs. That's a lot. And I only read 29 of them. So I need to get a bit better at that. I also have a lot of e-arcs left over from 2016 that I still haven't read, and most of these I still would like to get to at some point. 2016 was the year I discovered NetGalley, so I got a bit trigger happy with it and requested a lot of stuff without really thinking about it. In 2016 I required 56 e-arcs, and in that year I read 28 of them. In 2017 I read 5 more. Another reading challenge that I'm going to be setting myself in 2018 is something that I'm going to do a full video on, and I'm actually going to be doing a video on it every month because I want to make it into a series. And I do want to call it something like what the hell happened to my hauls, but I don't know how much YouTube will like the word hell. Does that sound silly? YouTube is ridiculous at the moment, so it might not like the word hell. I don't know. If you can think of a better name for the thing I'm about to tell you about, let me know. So basically what I've done, I have gone back and looked at all of my haul videos since I've had a YouTube channel, and I have made a list of the months that I hauled specific books. And every single month I am going to look at the books that I acquired in that particular month in the years previous, and I am going to try and read as many of those books as I can. In some months this is going to be more achievable than in others. I've already filmed the video for this for January and it's definitely achievable, so I think I'm going to get off to a good start. Other months there are a lot more books, and I'm not going to put on any pressure on myself to read all of those books because in some months that's going to be impossible. But it's just going to be a kind of a rough guide, and again a thing to remind me to read books that I acquired quite a while ago. Slight issue with this is that in the past year or so there's been a big problem with my haul videos. When I first started BookTube, I was very good at doing a haul video every single month, so the books that I was talking about hauling were books that I hauled that month. In the past year or so, that's completely gone to shit, and I still have a lot of books that I need to catch up on hauling. I'm hoping that I will be caught up by the end of February, but I'm not sure. I have been splitting them into kind of like genre or theme, which is working well for me so far, and hopefully I will get back to the point where I can just be doing them on a month by month basis. Something that I decided to do around just over halfway through 2017 was that I wanted to stop buying Kindle books. Yeah, I've done that. If you want to hear more of my thoughts on Kindle, I do have a discussion video of it that I will leave linked down below. But yeah, I think Kindle is really great for some people and it can make things really accessible. It's not something that I want to put my money into anymore, but I'm still hauling a lot of Kindle books because I got really behind. In 2018 I also want to host a readathon. I want to host an Irish readathon, which I'm planning will take place in March because it's around St. Patrick's Day. More of that will be revealed in the next month or so. I feel really nervous about it and I don't really think it's going to take off that much, but it's something I kind of just want to do for myself, and I do have a couple of co-hosts on board and I think it's just going to be really fun for all of us. I think that's everything. I think that's all the kind of goals and statistic things that I want to talk about today. Let me know some of your goals, your resolutions, any observations that you had when looking back at your reading year. Let me know what you think about all of my goals down below. I hope you're having a wonderful day and I will talk to you guys in my next video.